Hello, my name is Caleb Varner, and I will be doing my speech over communication problems between deaf and hard of hearing people and hearing people. To start my speech off, I would like to give a startling statistic. Did you know that 4.1% of the U.S. population is deaf or hard of hearing? Secondly, I would like to make note that I have two deaf parents and a hard of hearing sister, which gives me great knowledge and experience to talk about this topic. This leads me to say that there is a common issue within society. This common issue is the fact that there are many movie theaters across the country that do not offer closed captioning showings, which leads deaf people no choice but to have to use these devices that are really inconvenient to use and can be incredibly frustrating to use. The next thing I would like to make note of is there are several deaf schools in America. There's one in each state, but here's a few examples that I would like to give. There is the Arkansas School for the Deaf, the Oklahoma School for the Deaf, and Missouri School for the Deaf, to name a few. My second fun fact I would like to discuss is that a long time ago in schools, sign language was not allowed if people were seen communicating. If people were seen communicating with it, they got in trouble. As this was a common thing way back then, because people believed that if you did use sign language, it would hinder your ability to learn or to improve or to learn how to read. But nowadays, that is definitely not the case. Which leads me to the next point, is that we all need that awareness needs to be spread, as we should all be aware of deaf people and how to communicate with them and how to be more sensitive to them, as this can lead to major problems such as discord among family members, discord among friends, coworkers, and the lot. Which leads me to say that communication is vital and important to the success of businesses and of growth. Therefore, my purpose statement is to address the issues present within society and to give solutions to solve those problems. My three main points that I'll be discussing are: there are many misconceptions about deaf or hard of hearing people. Secondly, there have been major problems, especially in fast food restaurants, where discrimination has occurred. And third, there are several things that we can do to make communication and sensitivity better between deaf/hard of hearing people and hearing people. The first misconception I would like to discuss is, can deaf people drive? This is a very common misconception, as people think that just because you can't hear doesn't mean you can drive. Hearing doesn't impact a driver's ability. If you're able to see, then that's good enough. Then that clearly shows that you're able to drive. Which leads me to say that deaf people's other senses increase when they lose their ability to hear, which makes them excel greatly in driving. Second misconception I would like to discuss is most deaf or hard of hearing people have the ability to read lips. This is obviously not the case, because reading lips is harder than you think. You have to be able to have great concentration to be able to discern words greatly, which leads me to say that deaf people discern words differently than we do, which means we should be more sensitive to the fact that they are able to see words differently than we do. My final misconception I would like to discuss is deaf or hard of hearing people can't talk. This leads me to say that I can prove this to be a misconception, a false misconception, because both my parents and my sister can talk clearly. And to answer the question of why do some hard of hearing people may choose not to talk and why they sound different than people who can hear, is the fact that they may choose not to talk because they sound different and don't feel the need they need to talk because they can use ASL, and some of them just sound different because they didn't grow up learning to talk the same way that we did. And there are several, and also that leads me to say that there are several factors that can affect how we communicate. This can include the region that they were from, the education they got growing up, and the way that their communication worked in the home that they grew up in, and other factors of that sort. This leads me to my next main point. There has been discrimination in fast food restaurants. An example that I'm going to talk about is there was a man who was discriminated against who applied for a job at Burger King, but was discriminated against and not hired because of the fact that he was deaf. It affected them greatly because they were trying to get this job, and just because they couldn't hear, they were automatically unemployed. They were automatically denied, and so therefore they were not given the opportunity to get this job. Which leads me to say that the steps that were taken were ADA was contacted, and they were able to just solve the issue then. And discrimination has to meet three criteria. Was it intentional? Was it sexual? Was it sexual harassment / retaliation? And was it meant to hurt that person? And the steps that should be taken in order to prevent this from happening is, the best thing for you to do is to encourage them to contact a lawyer to help them with this matter. My final point that I would like to discuss is solutions on how we can make this issue solvable. The first thing that we could do is, in one-on-one situations, we could do things like get their attention before speaking, or speak slowly before talking, or make eye contact, which can make communication so much easier for them as they're able to engage with us a lot better. Now, if you're in a group setting, asking for their seat preference can allow them to sit somewhere so they're able to see you better, to see the speaker better, and be able to understand and be able to discern their words clearly. And also, as another tip, avoid unnecessary talking and moving, as this could cause distraction and can cause confusion for deaf people to understand. And lastly, provide visual aids if possible, so that way if you're talking about statistics, they can see what you're talking about, and they can follow along with the picture that you're trying to convey to them. My visual aid here is right here, and it's about an interpreter. And this leads me to my second point of how to communicate through an interpreter. My three main points that I would like to talk about is communication, needs, and setting. Be sure to communicate this to the interpreter so they'll know where to show up, and they'll know the needs that are needed so they can prepare to satisfy those needs that are needing to be met. And secondly, discuss the fees and privileges before the service, so that way you are on the same page to know how much it will cost, and the interpreter will get the pay that they are obligated to, and you're in agreement to make this service happen fairly to the deaf person that needs it. And this is an interpreter. This is an interpreter signing interpreter. Let me see if I can get it to play. I'll do it again. And finally, my conclusion. There are many misconceptions about deaf or hard of hearing people. And secondly, there have been major problems, especially in fast food restaurants, where discrimination has occurred. And the last point that I discussed was there are several things that can be done to make communication and sensitivity better between hearing and deaf and hard of hearing people. And to reiterate the point that I made, 4.1% of people within the United States are deaf and hard of hearing. And my final statement of this topic: deaf / hard of hearing people are just like hearing people. They just don't communicate the same way. And by us learning to communicate a certain way, we can make communication better. Thank you.